There's a really sad story from the weekend here on the Suncoast. A trailer owned by Florida beach horses, that's the ones that swim in the water off the Palmasola Causeway, it got T-boned, killing one horse and injuring numerous others. And today's Injuries Are Personal with Carl Reynolds Law. Attorney Carl Reynolds is here to talk about what type of compensation is possible when we lose something that means so much to us. Oh, so many people I saw posting about this over the weekend. We see those horses, we feel like we know them.
Right.
They're one of the wonderful things.
I live right there.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you how you got involved with this incident.
So I live right there. My girls own horses, so we've got a couple on our property. We also have 3 dogs, and over the years we've owned numerous kinds of pets, from goats to chickens to anything else. So they really become part of your family, and it is devastating. It's like losing a loved one.
Okay, so the question here, I understand that you actually were giving some feedback on this situation. Is there compensation when there is, say, an injury to an animal as a result of something that's no fault of your own?
So unfortunately, Florida does not recognize what you would call a personal injury component to animals. Under Florida law, currently, we treat animals, even though us pet owners treat them much differently. They're really part of the family, but they're treated as personal property. So like any personal property, what you're entitled to as far as compensation is what the value of that property is. So you don't get any emotional distress. There are some states, or a handful of states, that do recognize that right, but it's a difficult thing to quantify. You know, let's put it in the context of property. We just had all these hurricanes come through, and let's say you have a wall in your house that has the marks of the height of the children as they go up. Okay, that's a very valuable wall to you. Now, in the real world, the value of that wall is whatever, you know, let's say it's $1,000 worth of
drywall and stuff,
then that's all it's worth. But to you, you know, it'd be 10 grand to fix it. Well, let's say it gets damaged in a storm, and you could maybe save it, but you got to spend 10 grand to save it. The insurance company's not going to compensate you that. They're going to pay you $1,000 because that's what the wall's worth. Same thing here. A horse, it's whatever the fair market value is of a horse or your dog or your pet. We need to work with our legislature to see if we can't change the law to appreciate the fact that they're really family members, and there should be some amount of compensation if you had to watch and witness one of your family members die in front of you, which is what happened this weekend.
Right. Now, that is awful. Interesting, though, I do have to ask, and I don't mean for it to sound callous at all, if you're in a car accident and your dog is in the car and either gets seriously injured and you rack up huge vet bills, or the animal were to pass away, do they assign a market value, or
they do.
Okay, so there is money that can be received, and are those vet bills able to be compensated?
Yes, as long as they're reasonable and necessary. So let's take a scenario. Let's say it's a dog that has an expected life of 12 years. They're 10 years old. They're in an accident. Let's say their fair market value is $500. But because they're a member of your family, you're going to spend whatever you can to save it, even if it's only going to buy it 2 more years. And so let's say you spend $2,500 in vet bills. Well, the courts will probably say, hey, you get what the fair market value of that dog was, not the $2,500. That wasn't reasonable or necessary because it exceeded the value of the property. Now, again, I know it's very callous to say I'm a pet owner. I would spend whatever it took to save my dogs, right? But unfortunately, the law doesn't recognize it. That's why we probably ought to work with our legislatures to change the law in that respect, because Florida just doesn't recognize that.
And it's interesting that there are states that do. So obviously that, you know, people have started to try to.
One of the first ones was Hawaii. I learned that in law school back, you know, more than 20 years ago. They recognized an intentional infliction of emotional distress. It was a situation where a dog was attacked by another dog and was mauled in front of the owner, and the owner had the right to seek compensation for witnessing their dog killed in front of them.
I think we all understand that that seems very fair and reasonable, you know, due to the emotional attachment there. Now, in this situation this weekend, those horses were also part of a business. Does that allow them to then get some compensation for income that would be lost? I'm sure they're not going to be out giving beach tours.
So yes, so under the law, you're entitled to the fair market value of that horse, and also if that property earned money, then what the earning potential was up until the point that you're made whole, or there's a bona fide offer to make you whole. So let's say that the insurance company says, hey, we'll pay you $10,000 for this horse. As long as that was a bona fide offer, as long as they didn't offer like $500 and the horse is really worth 10.
Right.
But if they gave an attempt to make good on that, At that point, even if you chose not to accept it or you haggle with them or it took you a while to find a replacement horse, you're cut off from compensation for the lost wages up to that point.
Okay, all right. Well,
but you are entitled to lost wages, vet bills.
Which is good. Yeah, no, that story definitely has tugged on a lot of people's heartstrings. So
heartbreak.
our hearts go out to them, and we wish them the best of luck with the healing of those animals. For information about any of your legal questions, you can find Carl and his team by going to injuriesarepersonal.com.